Okay, we are live. This is Attorney Vincent Davis, and this is The Secret, How to Fight CPS and Win. And my special co-host is Mr. Darren Guy. Darren, how are you today? Too bad I can't hear Darren.
Ooh, it's a good day.
While he figures out his technical difficulties, I see we have a special guest, Miss Tiffany. Is it Masterson?
Yes, correct.
Hi, Tiffany. How are you?
I'm good.
So, where are you calling us from?
Lodi, California.
Oh, what county is that?
It is San Joaquin County.
Oh, that's San Joaquin. Okay. So, your cases are done where in Stockton?
Yes, Stockton.
Department 9C?
Correct, yes.
Check.
Been there many times. So, what's going on in Stockton with CPS?
So, I got my CPS case November 2021. And I was at the hospital. I gave birth to my second son. This is my second case. So, I went into the hospital, gave birth. I was on methadone. But into the early stages of my pregnancy, I was had an addiction problem. So my baby ended up testing positive for opiates. So they took him from me from the hospital, my newborn. So at that point, I was like, okay, is there anything I can do? Like, can I go into a program? So the CPS, it was just underneath investigation at the time. And I knew, that they were going to investigate me. I was on methadone at the time. And sorry about that. I don't know what happened. But maybe I should start over. So I have two kids. I have a 5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old. So they were investigating on my newborn. He ended up testing positive for methadone, so they had to detox him and everything. But I did have a prior case in 2018, which was closed. I reunified with my first son. It was just unfortunately me that got to reunify with my son. My ex-husband ended up committing suicide in jail while I had my CPS with my first son. So CPS was knew that. So I was doing counseling. I was doing everything I was supposed to do in my first CPS case, and it successfully closed, and I was able to reunify the first time with my kids, with my son. But on this case, they took him in November of 2021 at the hospital, and he ended up going with family, but they also took my first son took my first son from me also. And the program that I went out in San Joaquin County. It was a program, and it was a program where you could take your children with you. And I went to this program years ago, which I was able to take my first son to. And I asked the CPS workers if I could, take my kids to that program and live in-house with them while I was working on my therapy and my classes and everything. And they told me I wasn't able to do that. And I said, okay, that's fine. And I said, is there any way, like, if I am going to be able to reunify with my children the second time? And right off the bat, they said no. They said that they were going to adopt my kids out. They said that this is my second time having a CPS case, so I would basically get my parental rights and everything taken away from me, which I still went into a program. I did 6 months. I did 2.5 months in there. It wasn't it wasn't a program anymore where I could do 6 months because it was through Medi-Cal at the time. So it didn't cover my whole 6 months. So I did 2 months there. After I did that, I did aftercare, which I was being tested every week. And I was also on methadone. So I was being tested every week also at methadone. But as time went on, the place that I would test at was called Intercept, and they it was one. This was the first time this happened to me. They tested me and they called me 3 days later and said that I was dirty for meth. And I said, well, okay, is there any way that you could like run that through the lab or I can come back down and retest or do something? And they were like, okay, we're going to send it further out to the lab. I said, okay. They called me back a week later and apologized and said that it was not, I wasn't dirty. I was clean. This happened twice more to me throughout the month. And I was in drug court and I told my drug court counselor, I said, look, like this keeps happening to me. And I test down at the methadone clinic, and I get take homes, which take homes is, you get like a week's worth, but you have to earn those weeks worth of methadone, which I did. And I was getting all my take homes because I was testing clean and I was doing everything I was supposed to do in that program also. So, I was going to my methadone clinic and doing that as I was like still trying to get in touch with my CPS worker because I wanted to let my CPS worker know, like, hey, I was testing down at the place that you sent me to test down to, and I'm testing dirty, but I know that I'm not using, and just to keep him like in the loop, so I didn't want him to think like I was doing anything wrong. He just kind of like brushed it off, kind of ignored me on it. And I was like, okay, everything is on is documented. So, like if I call the Intercept place, then they tell me that I'm sorry, I'm all over the place right now. um, they tell me that I'm dirty, but I'm really not dirty because it'll come back that I'm clean. Like they'll call me back and say, okay, it was a false positive. Um, so going into was December of last year, December 2022. I would I you have to call that drug testing place, and oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention that I successfully completed outpatient care also. The only thing left that I had to complete was drug court, which drug court is a whole year long process. Um so I successfully did outpatient. So it was December of 2022, and I called my CPS worker because I wasn't getting called into drug tests anymore. And I was like, okay, this is weird. And they said, okay, call your drug court person. And so I was trying to get a hold of them, trying to get a hold of them. And I finally got a hold of the CPS worker, called me back and says that my court counselor no longer works for the county. And I said, okay, well, nobody nobody contacted me, nobody notified me, and my CPS worker proceeds to tell me that I tested positive for codeine. And I said, okay, well, I haven't been able to drug test because I haven't been called in a drug test because I haven't been able to get a hold of my drug court worker, which I didn't know that they got terminated or just quit, or nobody kept me in the loop about it. And so I said, okay, well, I do test down at the methadone clinic. So can you do a release of information and talk to my counselor? Because I've never been dirty at my methadone clinic, but I'm always popping up dirty at the intercept place, which I looked back on on my tablet. I would dot the dates where I would test just in case to cover my ass. So I went back on the dates and I was like, okay, they saying I tested dirty this day. Well, I tested down at methadone the same day, but I couldn't get a release of information at that time because they terminated me from drug court. So that's kind of where I'm at with my case right now. I go back to court in July, and they're gonna basically adopt my kids out. And I've been trying to, you know, I've went down to attorneys. I've talked to my attorney. Um, they're really not much. I feel like I've just kind of pushed to the side, and there was a period of time where I talked to my CPS worker for months. His excuse was because he didn't have my phone number, but I left several voice messages to him with my phone number included. Um, I do get to see my boys, but I only get to see them for 2 hours a week, and I just this is just like my last like hope. Like I I feel like I need to get in contact with somebody that will help me fight for my kids because my attorney's not helping me. I've been clean and sober since November of 2021, doing what I need to do. I went into, like um had to do outpatient again, but they won't let me because I've already done it, and as I'm clean, so I'm not testing dirty. So they're like, okay, you don't have a drug problem anymore. Um, I mean, I'm financially stable. I have everything for my kids. I'm just like I'm just stuck with this whole like thing, and I feel like I've just been like neglected. Like it's just because I've had a second CPS case. I feel like they just didn't want to give me a second chance. But you know, my first son, his dad committed suicide 5 years ago. So all he really has is he has a friend, but you know, he my kids need their mom, and like this is the longest I've been away from my kids ever, and I just want my kids back. I've done everything they've asked me to do, and I feel like I just got lost in the mix, and I need help.
When is your next court date?
It's July 5th.
Okay, so not too much time. When did you lose your family reunification services?
This was in December of last year.
Did you file what's called an appeal or writ?
Yes, I did.
And what happened?
What happened was I got a letter in the mail stating that CPS denied it.
Okay, CPS doesn't deny writs and appeals. It's the
Well,
California,
it
excuse me.
was judge. Well, it was the judge and the CPS, because when I got the letter, I went down to the courthouse in the Department 9. Told me that the judge, it was, they told me it was up to CPS and the judge.
Okay, Tiffany, I
Yes.
want you to listen to what I'm going to say.
Okay.
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 Number one, I don't care what you think that you know. Okay. But what I'm about to tell you is correct.
Okay.
110%.
Okay.
When you file a writ,
Uh
which
huh.
is a special appeal regarding the termination of your family reunification services,
Uh huh.
the only person or persons that can deny it is the California Court of Appeals, not CPS and not the judge in 9C. They don't
Okay.
have anything to do with the writ.
Okay.
So,
Know that I've been told something different.
okay, so what you need to do is you need to go to the court tomorrow, the clerk, and get a copy of the notice of intent to file a writ
Okay.
that was filed in your case.
Okay.
Okay. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to guess at something. All right. I'm going to guess your notice of intent was never filed.
Well, I did go down to the courthouse and I got the paper for it. Basically to basically it was, to to not stop the process, but what my attorney told me was that I could go get this paper. I could request for at least guardianship. So that's what I did.
Okay, Tiffany,
Yes.
you and I are talking about night and day,
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
right? We're not even on the same page.
Okay. Yeah, because you're telling me something that I probably have never heard of before, that somebody's never told me before.
Okay. So you're in California.
Yeah.
I'm in California.
Mm.
Okay. I'm licensed to practice law in this area in California. Well,
Okay.
I'm licensed to practice law and I practice in this area for over 30 years.
Okay.
What I told you is 110% correct.
Okay.
I don't know what you've been told. I don't know who told you. Doesn't matter. I'm telling you, go down to the court clerk's office and
Okay.
tell them you want a copy of the notice of intent to file a writ that was filed after you lost your family reunification services.
Okay.
Now, unfortunately, I would bet $1 listening to your story, um, listening to you, and then, guessing what might have been done or not done in San Joaquin County, that your notice of intent was never filed. So the Court of Appeals never reviewed your case. Now, I hope that I'm wrong, okay, because if I'm wrong, what I'm about to tell you may not work. If you were misled and told that, your notice of intent to file a writ was filed and no appellate brief was subsequently filed, you might have a basis to make a motion to set your case back because of some type of fraud that may have been perpetrated against you. Who did it? I don't know. I don't know. So that's going to be your first assignment. Okay. Now, when you go down there, you got to take your government issued ID, license, driver's license, or your California has that what ID card
Yeah, I have my.
or your passport, and you have to ask just for what I ask you to ask for, just for what I said. If you say it wrong, they won't know what you're talking about, or at least they'll act like they won't know what you're talking about. Okay. So that's the first thing you have to do. And until you do that, I can't tell you which way you should go.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the other thing that you should do is you should talk to someone, hopefully your attorney, and file what's called a 388 and a motion for bonding study.
Okay.
Two different things, two totally different things.
Okay.
That is the only way that you're going to increase your chance to have your children not be adopted out.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the third thing that you might want to consider, are your kids placed with a relative?
Yes.
Who? Couldn't hear what you said.
My in-laws.
Okay. Do you get along with your in-laws?
Yes.
Okay. So let me tell you this. Did you know that your in-laws could tell the social worker, hey, we don't want to adopt the kids, and but we want to keep them permanently? Did you know that?
No, I did not.
I wonder if they know it. Because
Yeah.
here's the typical conversation I hear or story that I hear. The in-laws, the grandparents say, hey, we don't want to adopt the kids, but we'll keep them forever through legal guardianship.
Uh-huh.
Social worker allegedly says, well, if you don't adopt the kids, we're going to move them.
That's what they said.
Okay, that's illegal now in California. It actually was legal a few years ago, but the law changed. And grandparents or anybody who has the kids can say, we don't want to adopt them. We want to keep them through legal guardianship. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can win this both two ways. You can find out what's happening in your case legally, and you can talk to the grandparents and say, "Hey, you don't have to adopt the kids. You can keep them forever under legal guardianship." And if you don't believe me, you can call this attorney down in Los Angeles County. His name is Vince Davis, and that's his number. Bottom right, bottom right at the screen.
Okay.
888-888-6582.
Okay.
Okay.
Uh,
Now, once you get, so I've given you two ways to attack this problem. Once you get the paperwork from your file tomorrow,
Uh-huh.
or you learn that it doesn't exist, then I'm going to tell you what to do. Okay.
Okay.
I'm not going to tell you tonight it's too long and involved process if you go right or if you go left. Let's figure out which way you have to go, and then I'll tell you what to do. Okay? Sound fair?
Yes, that's fair.
Okay. Mr. Guai, anything that you want to ask or say?
I got like 3 pages of going back at the beginning. Now you had a case previously. Is that what I was reading there?
Yes.
Not, that's what you had said. But you were reunified with your children, or did they unfind it? There was no.
No, in 2018, I was reunified with my son within 3 months of having that
Okay.
case.
Okay. So the other child, you were pregnant with the other child? Is that what it was, or you were having that baby, or the baby wasn't in play yet?
No, no, my second son wasn't even
Okay.
born yet or thought of.
Like, what were some of the things that what was their reasoning? What was the terms and the reasoning for that first child? It was,
Because he had opiates in his system, just like my
right.
second.
Okay. Yep. Now, did they know that they knew for a fact, did you fill out a thing for them? Like, or did they provide you the services for the methadone clinic, or was this just,
No,
you?
I did. I did it on my own. I
Okay.
down to the methadone clinic and I was like, I need help. I'm pregnant and I need help, like quitting or
Right.
I'm pregnant. I don't want to like hurt my baby with like detoxing cold turkey. And so the methadone clinic helped me with that.
But then at that point, they tried, even though you were reunified, during that reunification time, CPS tried to say that you were a substance abuser and that you were an addict and all that stuff, correct?
Yes, correct.
So that was their argument against you. Now, but they required you to go to services, and your counselor said, "Whoa, this lady's fine. She's doing what she's supposed to be doing. She's doing all of these things, right?"
Yeah.
Right. So then, fast forward to the second child. Then, when you were in there with the second kid, the same synopsis, right? Like the
The
same
same
everything, like to a T.
to the
And
yeah.
then, and then, I mean, short of the fact that this baby did not, this baby did also or did not check out with the opiate system when it was born. It did not, right? Just methadone, correct?
No, he did have other opiates in his system, just like my first son did. So
Okay.
that's your argument with me is I'm a habitual substance abuse user. So
Yep.
that's why it's for me.
Hey, you know what? As long as you're trying hard and you're doing what you're doing, don't worry about what anybody else thinks. That's what I say. Um, so where now you're at the where are you as far as the substance abuse stuff goes in your case right now with them and
Um,
all
I
of these?
I'm not on methadone anymore, and I told them that I got off methadone. I'm clean on everything.
Okay, good for
I've been.
you.
Thank you.
Um, but what are they? Are they still Are they still pushing the
They're
whole drug use and the?
they're pushing because they terminated me from drug court and they said that was part of my case plan with CPS. So because of that whole scenario with drug court, I got terminated. That's why I lost my reunification, which I didn't even know that my drug court counselor stopped working for the county, and that was around the time that they said that I was testing positive for other opiates in my system.
Right.
But I told them, I said, can we do a release of information to my methadone clinic counselor? Because she can pull up every test that I've done down at methadone, and
Right.
I'm clean there, but I'm dirty over at this clinic. So, and there's been history at that other clinic that I was testing positive for a whole different type of drug, but they would call me back a week later because they sent it down further to the lab or whatever they did, and they told me that they were sorry that it was a false positive or whatever it was, that I actually was clean.
Now I'm going to also ask you here the new $1 million Davis question is, were these drug screens or drug tests that they were giving you?
They were drug tests.
Okay.
Well,
So
that's interesting. Well, hold on a second. That's interesting that you're saying that, because you remember when they first told you that you were dirty for something, and then they retested you, they sent it out to a laboratory, you said,
Yeah.
and it came back clean.
Yes.
That leads me to believe that the first test they did was not a test, but instead a drug screen.
See, I'm not sure.
There's a difference between a drug screen and a drug test. Okay. And this is something that we learned on our show maybe a month ago from a lawyer who was also a forensic scientist by the name of Okori Okorocha.
Yes.
Okori,
O.
you can't pronounce that name, can you? Okori explained to us that a drug screen, if objected to, cannot come into evidence because it doesn't satisfy the Kelly-Fry standards. Okay. And he said that if they take a drug screen and then they send it out to a lab, you have to, or your attorney or your expert witness has to go and look at the lab to make sure that they're doing the proper testing with the proper type of equipment. I want to give you an example. One of the things Okori explained to us was that there are two types of methamphetamine. One is a legal type that occurs in our system, and one is an illegal type that you get from street drugs. All tests for methamphetamine are going to, if you have one of those substances in your system, is going to come up positive for methamphetamine. But there's one last test they have to do to determine if it was the illegal meth or the legal meth. Okay? If they don't do that test, you have to object. Now, here's the thing that most people don't realize. Unless you and your attorney challenge that at the court hearing, you're never going to know. Because the lab is just likely to call it positive for meth, which would be true, but it doesn't do that last step. And that last step is apparently done by a machine that's so expensive that most labs don't even have that machine. So one of the things that he does when he testifies for people, generally in criminal cases, is he goes and he visits the lab to see if they're doing the right procedures. I'm doing a case right now up in Northern California County, not too far from you, as a matter of fact. And they filed something that said that the client had 3 positive toxicology screens. At least they call it the same. They're calling it the right name. And I mentioned to the judge that we object. Screens aren't admissible. They don't meet Kelly-Fry. Everyone in the court looked at me like I was an alien from Mars.
Yeah.
Like an alien from Mars. Like, what are you talking about? Because the culture is that drug screens are just as good as drug tests. But after listening to Okori, They're not even close.
Mm-hmm.
They're not even close.
Right.
Mhm.
You know, and here's a story that I tell also that happened in your county, right site in Department 9C. The judge, there was some wild allegation that my client was using alcohol.
Uh-huh.
That she was drunk at a barbecue or picnic or something like that. They tell my client, go take a test. And I'm thinking, where can she take a test? There's no lab here.
Right.
Oh, they said, well, we have a lady that does, drug testing right outside. When you walk out of 9C, right
Uh-huh.
on your left, there's a door
Right.
and it has a window on it. And I've looked in that window, like, who the hell sits in here? I look in the window, there's a desk, a fax machine, a printer, couple chairs, but there's no testing equipment.
That doesn't even sound like a toilet.
So
Yeah.
and the judge orders my client to go take a test. I said, wait a minute. And this is before I even talked to Okori. This is years ago.
Yeah.
I said, wait a minute, Judge, I object. That's not a laboratory. How are you going to do a test in there?
Yeah.
Well, we do blah, blah, blah. I said, wait a minute, that doesn't pass Kelly Fry. I'm no forensic scientist, but that's not a real test.
Yeah.
Mhm.
One of the attorneys says to me, Mr. Davis, we do this all the time. So what? You do it all the time. That don't make it right. That don't make it admissible evidence.
Yeah.
So the judge says, well, if it comes back positive, we'll send her to the testing facility.
Mhm.
It came back positive.
Mhm.
So after we left court that day, he ordered her to go like about a mile away down there in Stockton
Yep.
to the drug testing facility.
I know what you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
We parked. She gets out. She was giving me a ride back to the airport. She gets out, goes test. The next day, I get the results. Negative. Do you know that CPS still tried to use that positive,
Oh,
I
God.
don't know what, in the office against my
Wow.
client? But the judge saw it. He says, no. The testing facility said, no, it's negative. So we're going to treat it negative.
Yeah.
Okay. But if I don't object to it, all right, just on a scientific basis for evidence, my client's screwed. She loses her kids. And apparently that's what they do up there.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So you have to make sure, in your attorney, that the testing that is done is more than a toxicology screen. And if it comes back positive, you got to make sure that they have the right equipment.
Mm.
Because the right equipment and the right tests and the procedures. This is the other thing Corey told me or told us. Sometimes they'll do a test and they don't use the right procedures in the right order.
Mhm.
And that can come out with a false positive. I don't know if you know this, but even if testing is done accurately with the right equipment, there's a plus or minus error rate of about 3 to 5% that there will be a false positive or a false negative. In other words, testing isn't 100%.
Mhm.
Okay. That's why when you ask for a retest, I did know this. If you ask for a retest, under federal law, they have to give you a retest.
Mhm.
Okay. And if they don't, they can't use that first test against you.
Mm.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now,
You just wanna
do you ever hear anybody talking about that in a CPS courtroom?
No.
No. Test came back positive. Who cares if it's a test or toxicology? You're done.
Yeah.
Over and done with. So
Mhm.
it's sad because they're using pseudoscience that's not even admissible over objection to take children away.
Yeah.
So I can tell you right now, and it's not necessarily your fault, but all the testing that's been done on you, no one can go testify whether that testing was done under the right policy or right procedures, or whether they have the correct equipment or updated equipment. There's a lot of cases, especially in DUI cases, where the testing gets thrown out because the mechanism that they test or they use to test you It has to go through periodic updates and, upgrades.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's faulty.
Mhm.
Well, you hear that in DUI cases, but you don't ever hear it in CPS cases.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
CPA cases, the social worker said the lab said it was dirty. Therefore, it's dirty. It's etched in stone. It's like the 10 Commandments.
Yeah. That's how it feels.
Yeah. And here's the real
Mhm.
kicker about all of this. I actually believe, based on things that I've seen and heard, but didn't put together over the years, that the county knows this. They know that these tests are questionable or these screens, but they don't use them or ask for them because apparently to do a drug screen, it's like using something off the shelf at CVS or Save-Ons or Walgreens. It's very inexpensive, right?
Yeah.
To send
Mhm.
something to a lab to actually get tested through the procedure with the right equipment. And remember, all labs don't have the right equipment, but with the right equipment, it's extremely expensive. And if you have all those people in CPS court or, you know, um, criminal court going to get tested on the county's dime, it must be a fortune.
Right.
But if you and your attorney don't ask for it, it's like, oh well, you're losing your kids, and next case, next
Yeah.
case.
Yep.
So one of the things I'm going to talk to you about is about when you find out the results from going to the clerk's office, is how you should probably go back and go over it. See, the interesting thing is one of the things you said was when I tested on the same day at the two different places, the place for the county was positive, but my program was negative.
Right.
That's because they were doing different things.
Yeah.
At worst, the county's testing facility was really a drug screen and not a test. In the real facility, they were using real lab equipment. So
Yeah.
by definition, it's going to be different.
Yeah. But
Okay.
it just was like all they I did a release of information. All they had to do was get a hold of that program, and they didn't even take the time out to do that for me.
Yeah, because here's the thing. Look, Tiffany, they're trying to win a case. Did you ever notice that?
Right.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, they're trying to win a case. You think they're going to do something to help you?
Right. Give you information or provide you the right way? Absolutely
And
not.
and imagine this. Imagine if they go to the lab and they say, "Oh yeah, well she tested negative," and then someone brings up, "Well, why did she test positive with the other place?" Well, it really wasn't a test; it was a drug screen.
Right.
How are they going to explain that?
Yeah.
Mm.
Somebody's going to say, "Well, like, wait a minute, what's going on? Has this happened to other people? Have other people lost their kids this way?"
Right.
Someone asked me, and I'm still contemplating it, whether a lawsuit against CPS, either in the county in the county in California or the state, all CPS counties, to stop using drug screens, to try to keep them out of evidence. Because even if you won, you're going to save a lot of kids. But even if you lost, at least a fair number of attorneys and parents will realize drug screens aren't admissible.
Yeah.
They're just not scientifically adequate under our standards of care, the Kelly Fry test.
Yeah.
So a lawsuit would be a great idea.
That's honestly what I've been thinking about the last couple months. Like, is there any way that I could sue CPS? Because I know that I'm not crazy, and I know that they're crazy, and I know that I've done everything they've asked me to do, and I just feel like this whole case has just been a joke. Like I
Well,
feel like
it's not going to be a joke if you lose your kids.
No, sir.
this case that I've had is a joke. I
Yeah.
haven't taken it
Here's
seriously.
something. Look at the screen. Brighter Bridges says class action lawsuit is what CPS needs. You would be fabulous attorney for that. Here's the
Yeah.
problem, Brighter Bridge. Who's going to pay for it?
Mm.
You just don't wave a wand and think these people, you're going to win a case. It takes hours, thousands of hours. It takes money, right?
Mhm.
You
Okay.
might spend 250,000 just noticing the class, sending out the notice, the letters, the ink, the envelopes, the postage. Who's going to pay for all of that?
Yeah.
Anyway, Tiffany, are there any last questions you want to ask me? Because we're getting towards the end of the show tonight.
Um, no, I don't think I do.
Okay. But this is what I want you to do. I want you to get that information that I suggested that you get, and you
Okay.
call, and then you email or call Grace back and get back on the show so we can
Okay.
follow through with yours, sometime this week. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much. I want to get down that number on the bottom of the screen really quick. I don't know. I'm trying to open my iPad.
Hey, Tiffany, this will be on the internet, this show and all the shows forever.
Right. Okay.
Okay. You
Okay.
can just do a replay of any show, it'll be there.
Yeah.
You know what's even funnier? People contact me or try to contact me from these shows, and they say, "Hey, what's your telephone number?"
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, are you serious? Hey, Grace, maybe the telephone number, Grace, should be in bright red, not in
Yeah.
this, this
Yeah, with
orange
a
color.
blinking, like a neon sign doing the
Right.
blinking thing,
Hey, Tiffany, thank you again. I look forward to hearing from you soon. Okay.
Okay. Thank
Tiffany, good luck. Keep your head up with the substance abuse stuff.
Okay, Mr.
Mr.
Darren.
Dan, Mr.
Anything you want to say before we cut off today?
It just seems like we're seeing more and more and more of this substance abuse stuff, in these states pushing.
It's not new. It's just that people,
Right. It's just being
with
more.
social media, people are coming forward and say, "Hey, something
Right.
has to be done. I got screwed."
And I mean, so what are you? Is there anything that you like? Just hypothetically, is there things that are down the pike that you're starting to work on that you're like, okay, this has got to
Yeah.
stop?
There,
And
there are always things coming down the pike, always ideas. Problem is implementation. I do have a regular job, believe it or not.
right.
I represent, a bunch of people in these CPS cases, and that takes time and
Yeah, and I would
energy.
imagine
And
so.
so just to do all this extra stuff, that takes time and energy as well.
Right.
There's only 24 hours in the day. I try to sleep 7 to 8 of them. And
Oh, that's
then,
wasting time.
yeah, yeah. And then there's the rest of life going on. You
Right.
got the family issues, you got the,
Well,
you
some
know,
of us have
the friends issues, you
that.
know,
Right.
just
Mhm.
life gets in the way.
Mm.
Life just
It
gets in the
is.
way.
It is funny that way. It's so sad just to hear this. These people are trying to fight for their sobriety. They're trying to fight for, to get themselves well in their heads, whether it's a mental thing or it's a substance abuse thing. And then CPS swoops right in. And there's so much conflicting information all the way around between
Mhm.
studies, between policymakers to the department, and then to you, as a lawyer or attorney or however it's called, and like here you are, like doing this juggling act,
Right.
sometimes it works for one thing and it won't work for the other just because someone feels this way.
Hey, I want to mention something to you. I did something today, and I don't do it often just because people don't ask me to do it often.
Mm-hmm.
But I did a consultation with some parents and their attorney from Oklahoma. They have a case in Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And I was able to give the attorney a lot of ideas on what to do to win the case.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of surprised myself because, I'm detached from the case. I'm not the actual attorney.
Right.
The attorney and the client calling me and say, "Hey, what would you do?" They sent me documents and I reviewed them, and I was able to ask questions and the whole thing. And when I got off the phone, it was about a 90-minute telephone call. I got off the phone and I was thinking, I really had some really good good ideas,
Right.
and I was able to tell the client and the attorney on which direction they should be going in. And I think they go to trial again Wednesday. They're in the middle of trial, by the way. They go to
Mhm.
trial again Wednesday, and we're going to talk tomorrow night because I gave them all a little assignment to do to try to
Right.
find some information. But if anybody out there, especially in other states, if you have, or in California, if you want to have a consultation with me about how to win or how I would approach a specific case, please give me a call at that number that you see on the screen. 888-888-6582.
Mhm.
Okay, Darren, I got to run. I have an appointment this evening,
Yes,
and I
sir.
want to thank you for being on with me. We'll see
Mhm.
everyone tomorrow, Tuesday, at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And everyone who's going to be watching, come up with a question and post it in the comments, and we'll try to answer it. Or email grace@vincentwdavis.com, and we'll try to get you on the show, just as we did with our guest tonight. All
All right.
righty. Good night, all. Bye bye.
Good night.